Jazeera is set to expose corrupt Zimbabwean politicians in an explosive documentary set to be aired next month. Award-winning journalist Hope Portingono took to Twitter to reveal that the documentary will expose top ruling party politicians and people affiliated with ZANU-PF who are dipping their hands into the so-called cookie jar. Hope joins us now for more on this conversation. Hope, very good afternoon. Appreciate your time. Now, this documentary, if you will, has already been released. Now, as a journalist, what have you observed about the state of politics and governance in Zimbabwe, particularly with regards to corruption?
Thank you very much for having me. I think the documentary came out on Thursday, and there are 3 more documentaries that are going to come out. The first documentary that we saw that was broadcast on Thursday revealed the level of plunder in the gold sector and money laundering, where billions of dollars of gold has been leaving the country unaccounted for every year. The government itself has been on the record saying that $150 million worth of gold is being smuggled out of Zimbabwe every month. That's the equivalent to run the central hospitals in Zimbabwe for 3 years. Now, a lot of people have been discussing about this issue, and some of the people involved have been saying that it is their gold. But what is important to understand is that each time gold is smuggled out of Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe and its citizens lose the tax revenue that was supposed to be remitted to the fiscus, and it loses the foreign currency. So if someone smuggles gold worth $1 billion out of Zimbabwe, it means if the tax revenue was 30%, the Zimbabwean citizens have lost $300 million.
Well, Hope, let's talk about the individuals and groups who are involved in corrupt activities in Zimbabwe and how they're able to get away with it.
Well, the individuals are linked to, they're all linked to the ruling ZANU-PF party. They are ruling elites, and some of them are surrogates of those ruling elites. You cannot live with gold every day, as has been happening and has been proved by the documentary at Robert Mugabe International Airport, without participation of people in state organs and people high up. This gold has been leaving almost on a daily basis, according to what we have been told in the past, but we actually saw how they were doing it in this documentary. So it's about the political elites, it's about ZANU-PF.
Well, let me interject there. You say you saw how they were doing it. So there are specific individuals that were filmed actually smuggling the gold that you speak of out of Zimbabwe.
Yes, there were specific individuals. They were filmed in the airport, leaving the country, and one of the airport staff working for South African Airlines actually explained how they do it and how often they do it.
So what is the level of this corruption? I'd imagine that if this sort of information has come to the authorities, that the authorities are acting on this information. Are you aware of any such acts?
Well, the level of corruption is astounding, but the problem is that the authorities themselves are involved in this smuggling of gold out of the country. As I said before, that you cannot do it without the connivance of state security. You can't do it without the connivance of people that are high up in government. The last time I was sent to jail in 2020, after I had exposed that the president's niece, Henrietta Shwaya, who had been caught at the airport trying to smuggle 6.7 kilograms of gold to Dubai, was going to get bail unopposed. The fact that I was arrested and the fact that I'm still on remand and the state is holding on to the title deeds of my home shows you the level, how high up the level is in terms of the connivance. I would not have been arrested if I had not interfered with someone who's not connected to state security officials or the government itself.
Now, what I've been able to get from you, Hopeful, is that the Zimbabwe, in fact, let's talk about the police for a start. What work have they carried out since this documentary went live? Are you aware of any arrests or certainly people that have been questioned?
I'm not aware of people that have been arrested. The presidential spokesperson, Mr. George Charamba, has been on Twitter actually ridiculing the documentary. It shows you that there's no political will to deal with this issue because, as the documentary proved, it involves people that are in government and very powerful people. We do not expect any arrests. If they happen, they will be choreographed, is what they call it in Zimbabwe. They catch and release these people. Henrietta Shwaya, who's featured in the documentary, was caught with gold, but the National Prosecution Authority of Zimbabwe is saying that it doesn't have evidence. So we don't expect much from the state itself because it has been captured by part of this criminal gang.
Now, the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, I'd like to believe, is an independent acting body. Will they not have the power or capacity to at the very least question some of these individuals?
Well, the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission works on political will, just like the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. It's supposed to be an independent body, but up to now we do not have a voters' roll because the political elites in ZANU-PF do not want us to have a voters' roll. So the same applies to the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission. They have not really put anyone behind bars since they have been since they were put in place almost 4 or 5 years ago. They've never put anyone of significance behind bars because, as I've always said in my previous interviews with you, these people are there to represent the interests of a ruling elite, and the ruling elite is responsible for the corruption that is taking place in this country.
Now, in your opinion, what impact does corruption have on the lives of ordinary Zimbabweans? And certainly, how can this be addressed?
Well, corruption has got a huge impact on the lives of Zimbabweans. For instance, right now, as I'm speaking to you, all public hospitals in Zimbabwe do not have a single working radiotherapy machine, which means that if you get cancer and you're in Zimbabwe and you get a prescription of radiotherapy, then you're going to die. Hospitals do not have basic machines like X-ray. Kariba, which has got the biggest man-made lake in the world, does not have an X-ray machine at its hospital. If you come to Harare and Bulawayo, the two main capitals of the country, all the central hospitals, they do not have a working MRI machine for scans. So it tells you the depth of the decadence in terms of corruption and how it affects people. 2,500 Zimbabwean women die every year giving birth because there are no maternity theaters. The biggest hospital in the country has got only one working maternity theater, which was built by Ian Smith in 1977. It costs only $37,000 to build a maternity theater. If you were going to look at the gold that's being smuggled out of the country every month, that could build 4,500 maternity theaters and save the lives of our women who are giving birth. So that's the huge impact it has on people.
But that gold is not owned by the government, is it? I mean,
no, it's not owned by the government.
As you've suggested, various individuals that were questioned said that the gold was theirs.
It's not owned by the government, but they have to pay taxes. As I explained, if you smuggle gold worth $1 billion out of Zimbabwe, it means if the tax rate is 30%, it means the citizen and the state have lost $300 million. So you and I have to pay taxes for the money that we earn. But these criminals are not paying taxes, and these taxes are the ones that are supposed to run hospitals, to bring clean drinking water into our homes. Right now, Harare does not have clean drinking water. Our roads are potholed, and if you go into schools, especially rural schools, they are dilapidated. School kids are failing to pass exams. The pass rate for O-level was less than 20%. It is because the state is failing to provide books into these schools, and it is because the money that is supposed to buy these books is being taken by these criminals who are not paying taxes.
Now, Hopewell, you've been a vocal critic of the government's handling of various issues in Zimbabwe. How do you see the current political climate in the country, obviously building up to primaries, I think, which are currently in progress, the elections happening this year, and all of this obviously impacting the multitude of young people that remain unemployed in Zimbabwe? How are they likely to vote? Are the polls the answer, do you think, to the challenges that Zimbabwe faces?
Well, the problem that we have, Hugo, is that it's very unlikely to have a free and fair election, because we know that in a free and fair election, ZANU-PF is afraid of losing. It is, I think it is so unpopular. It has never been so unpopular like right now. And with these documentaries coming out, it's going to make it worse for ZANU-PF. But ZANU-PF controls the state institutions. It controls the supposedly independent Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. And by now, we should have a voters' roll. A member of Parliament, Alan Rust-Makeham, went to court asking for a voters' roll. That voters' roll was not released. And so how do you hold an election without a voters' roll? An election is a voters' roll. We don't have that voters' roll. So it means that the election result is going to be disputed. The state has failed to do the most basic, the bare minimum of putting paracetamol, IV paracetamol in hospitals. How can somebody in their right sense go and vote for the same thing that has seen so many Zimbabweans die from easily treatable diseases? But the state is aware of that. ZANU-PF is aware of that. It controls the state, and is going to make sure that the election is going to be very unfree and very unfair.
Hopojing Ona is an award-winning journalist from Zimbabwe. Appreciate your time this afternoon.